Vince Del Monte, it's an absolute pleasure and an honor to have you back on the Modern Warrior podcast. We did a podcast before online, but brilliant to have you here in person and brilliant to have you here on Irish soil as well.
Yes.
And you're somebody that myself and a lot of others would look up to as a man who has climbed and perhaps got to the peak of the mountain of success. And in many ways, that's been the case. You've become incredibly successful in your business and in your purpose there. However, 18 or 16 months ago, I believe some cracks began to appear. And can you bring us back to that experience where you pretty much, in my opinion, and from what I could see, had your life in good order, things going really well. However, things started to slip and slide. And
Yeah. Well, 16 months ago, this is public information now, got separated. Now, at the time, I didn't actually understand what the concept of I didn't understand what a separation was. But, best way to describe it was a massive disruption, massive disorientation that was starting to, arise from, I would say, detachment in our marriage from like years and years ago. And the only thing I want to talk about primarily is like my role in this. You have a lot of men who obviously listen to this podcast. So I want to specifically speak to the men because, I believe that you have to take 100% ownership of your 50%. And I feel since then I have, and I've spent the last 16 months trying to understand how this came to be. But, to sum it up, I was, a neglectful husband. I didn't think I was, but the kids and my partner got probably my leftovers. And I never woke up in the morning and say, I'm going to, neglect my family today, or I don't want this. I just was so driven. I was so focused. I was just so one-dimensional on just building my business, building my name, building, for the family. And I really felt like my heart was in the right spot. I figured out my purpose early on. So I think a lot of men can resonate. Like, that sounds like me. Like, isn't that what a woman wants? And, I guess there is an element of safety and security that every woman does want. And that's what I brought to the table. Massive stability to the home from massive amount of experiences. We were insulated in money. And our relationship now, kind of looking back, was kind of superficial. There wasn't a depth where, if you check my social media, you'd say, oh, Vince does date nights every Tuesday and he's drinking wine and they're smiling and they're at wineries and they're on trips and the kids are, it looked like a really happy, oh man, he's got it all together. And I will always remember my marriage as like more beautiful than not, but there were a lot of dark moments that I never dealt with. Things that were said, dysfunctional communication, that I should have said, hey, we need to go get some help. Like, this should not be happening right now. But I was so disconnected from myself, I didn't even have the capacity to connect with her. I had a lot of unprocessed trauma that, and I don't like talking about trauma a lot because I feel like it's an excuse because I still wasn't a grown adult. And it wasn't like she wasn't like giving me warning signs. It wasn't like she wasn't saying, hey, this needs to change, this needs to change. And whether her requests were realistic or not, that's not the point. I didn't change. I kind of just took my marriage for granted because, I grew up in a Christian home. We don't get divorce. I said vows at the altar. I had a covenant marriage, and I just didn't think people like us got divorced. I didn't think she could just stand up and say, I'm out. I can't do this anymore. So I truly took advantage. I think I broke her down slowly. And, it just came to a screeching halt when it was in November 2023. And it it's interesting because I was so disconnected from my family. Like my little girl, Amelia, she wouldn't listen to me. And it pissed me off. Like, and one night she just wasn't listening to me. This is so hard to like even comprehend that this was the reality of my relationship with my oldest daughter. Uh, but I was so frustrated because there's all these other things deteriorating. Like I had all these other things going on in my business that were, anyways, there's like some other drama that I was dealing with, and I was not emotionally regulated. Like I was not in control. I could not manage. I couldn't show up for the family unless things were going well in my business. I wouldn't be in a good mood. So the family never knew what version of Vince are we going to get today. And yeah, one night I just lost it, and I grabbed her by the ear, and I didn't hurt her, but like I grabbed her by the ear and wanted her to go upstairs to do what I told her to do, and I felt like so disrespected. And I felt so disrespected. It was almost an act against my wife as well, because like I felt so disrespected by her. And the reason my little girl's not respecting me is because she doesn't respect me. I just lost it. So, and then she lost it on me and had a meltdown. She had a nervous breakdown. Like she had maybe a panic attack because she's like, she felt that it was like physical abuse. I don't remember it like that, but I feel like I grabbed her ear. Like I didn't try to freaking rip her ear off, but like you never do that. And looking back, I wish I'd never done that. I've obviously a regret I'll always have. And me and her, we've talked about it, and she doesn't even remember, but she came downstairs to the office and she closed the door, and I was in such a state of disarray. I felt disrespected. I just wanted my little girl to listen to me. Although I probably hadn't earned her ear just because I'm her dad, because I hadn't spent a lot of time with her. So this was a byproduct of like years, right? This didn't happen overnight. So she basically said, you need to change, or like you got to move out or something like that. And I honestly like don't remember all the details. In therapy, like 16 months later, like we redid the night and we talked about it. And she said some stuff that I hardly even remember. I was in such a bad place. But from what she recalls, what I told her was, I don't love you and I don't love the kids. That's what I told her. Yeah. And in that moment, she said to me, this is the first time you've been honest your entire life. And that kind of took me back, because I didn't mean what I said. And even in that state, I knew I didn't actually mean that, but I really wanted to hurt her. And in that moment, she mentally checked out. Like in her mind, that was it. And in the next 2 weeks, you would have thought that I would have, the next day said, hey, remember, I didn't mean that last night. I didn't even remember I said that. I treated her like crap the next 2 weeks. And in that 2-week window, she mentally checked out. And to this day, 16 months later, she hasn't come back. And she's in a position now where it's just too late. So she's not in a place of wanting to try again, because her mindset, she already tried and got nothing back in return. If she was sitting here, she'd say something like that. I already tried and I got nothing in return. And she mentally checked out. She admitted 5 years prior to this even happening. So, and I share all this because a lot of men, we just take our relationships for granted, and our wives don't want to stir the pot. They're benefiting from the man's provisions and the experiences and the things he's bringing to the table. And the man's maybe, justifying it in his head, but look at this, look at this. So that happened, and I took off for a little bit. And when I came back, I thought everything was going to go back to normal. And she's like, Vince, I'm checked out. Like, I'm done. And that was around Christmas time. I'm like, what? What are you talking about? Like, and she's like, we're separated. And she basically said, you can go do what you want, and I'm going to go do what I want. I'm like, what are you talking about? And that was like the beginning of like my reawakening, when I realized that I've lost her and there was nothing I could do. And that was when I started to realize like I had serious anger issues. displays of anger I didn't know I was capable of, not against her. But I had the night that I tried to like, hey, let's make this work. She said, I'm done. That was the biggest form of rejection I'd ever experienced in my life. And that's when I knew, holy crap, I need to get help. And I got a therapist and I went right deep into like trying to understand how I lost my wife. And just so you know, I always thought like we were going to get back together. Like I'm like, this is probably going to take a year, maybe two. I didn't think it was going to get to where it's got now, where like I don't think we're going to make it. Not divorced, but I think it's beyond repair. I believe that, you know, God can do miracles and everything. It would have to be an act of God to bring us back together. It would have to be like a real miracle, like a true miracle. Therapy wouldn't bring us back together. We did all the therapy in the world. Might have made things worse, to be honest. So the biggest thing that I quickly realized was that the reason I couldn't connect with her was because I never learned how to connect with myself. And it goes back to like really simple things. Like, you know, in high school, I was always trying to be recognized. And I was trying to figure out like who I was. And I connected with the wrong group, the Italian dudes who, you know, the Genos, they were all my buddies. And I was trying to just kind of earn their, you know, validation. I wanted to be seen with those guys. And that led to drinking and stuff that I wasn't raised to do. And it was all things outside of who I authentically was. And I think what happened was in that pursuit of gaining an identity to, you know, fit in, I was incongruent and unauthentic with like the real version of me. And I think if you look at other areas of my life, like, you know, athletics and then entrepreneurship, those are all things that just kind of magnified this insecurity of not being connected to myself, loving myself, being authentic to who I really was. And those things, specifically entrepreneurship, they became almost like drugs to give me an identity, to give me validation of, hey, look at Vince, he's a successful guy. But it became, because I never done the inner work to really figure out my identity, one, in who God calls me to be, and then two, just who I see myself, I was just not connected. And I didn't even see value in connecting with myself because I achieved all this other stuff and I was getting my identity and recognition from like not having to do that work. So all of that pursuit was essentially a survival strategy, and survival strategies work. I mean, they worked until they don't. So they work to produce all this stuff, experiences, and what would be perceived as like success. And there was a lot of like lives impacted in the process. It was a lot of very noble and honorable work that was done to produce that success, if you will. I have no shame in that, and I'm proud of what I've built, and I love that I'm clear on my purpose, and I'm going to continue it. But I think the big thing with me is that, like most guys, is I didn't manage my relationships in the process. And, you know, the relationship was kind of more of a, you know, hey, look, I got a hot wife too. Hey, look, you know, it was more like, how could she make me look better? There wasn't a genuine relationship. And then when I lost her, it was crazy. I realized like, this is actually what I want. The thing that I lost, I actually realized like, I actually want her. And it got pretty, you know, the 16 months, there was a lot of like dark stuff that happened in that 16 months. I still wanted her. I still wanted, like, I wanted to reconcile. I wanted love to win. I wanted us to like, we can make this work. Like I wanted to do, I actually realized that I loved her. I do love her, but it was too late for her. Just, you can only be hurt so much. And to think like, was it that bad? So I've had to get to a point of just kind of acceptance of like, you know, sometimes your choices have severe consequences that you just can't reverse. And for some people, like they can't look past things. And I've had to start to rebuild, you know, I have to like, that's where we're at now. We're now like trying to actually accept the fact that, I'm raising 3 kids on my own and, running a business. We've significantly scaled back our operations and just our business philosophy. And even my messaging has dramatically changed. And it's not like a marketing thing. It's like truly like, I feel like I'm now the poster boy for entrepreneurs who are on this quest for like more and more and more and I see so many dudes in their 30s, they're like, you're literally going to lose her. Like I can tell just from conversations, I'm like, the way you're talking about her and all this stuff, like she's already probably on the way out. So I just,
even though they may be talking about her in quite a positive way.
Yeah, I can hear it. Yeah, I mean,
again, using the wife to make them look good.
Yeah, or even when the men don't even appreciate, and again, I have sympathy. Like I'm this guy, so I'm not like beating up guys when I'm sharing this message. I'm like, you have no idea why you're able to produce this much wealth because you have somebody taking care of your kid right now all the time. You don't have to worry about anything. All you worry about is work. Like, well, Vince, work comes with a lot of worry. I'm like, yeah, but you don't have to worry about, you're not worrying about your taxes. You're not worrying about the house staying clean. Your kid wakes up in the middle of the night. Your kid's sick. Like you have no clue of how much she's doing. And I said, if you don't believe me, take your kid for the next 1 week, just 1 week, not a month, just 1 full week and watch what happens to your schedule, to your energy, to your focus, to like, you'll be like, holy crap, how the hell does she do this? And how is this even stimulating? And most men have zero clue. I didn't. I kind of knew, like you see her doing stuff and you're appreciative and you're like, this is awesome. But like, until you actually resume the role and you're the one making the lunches in the morning and driving them to school both ways, and you're now doing freaking laundry. And now you got to worry about all their school stuff and their trips and all their recitals and gymnastics. And like, you're like, holy freaking crap. Like you immediately, you don't appreciate the concepts of sacrifice and servanthood until like you're watching kids all by yourself. And then all of a sudden, all your dreams and ambitions are like, shoot, like, what about me? And you're like, no, I brought these kids into the world to serve them. They're not here to serve me. And when you get in a relationship, the point is to like serve your partner. And then, I hear guys like, well, my wife's not keeping up to me. I'm outgrowing my wife. I'm like, well, no crap. All you do is freaking focus on yourself. No crap. You've outgrown your wife. Your wife, at what time? She doesn't have any time to do stuff. Like you watch the kids all the time and let's see how fast you're growing. So again, I say this with sympathy, like compassion and understanding, but most men are so checked out. They have zero clue. And they will get a wake-up call some way or shape or form. I just want to tell guys, like, it's not worth it. It's not worth losing your kids, breaking up the family unit. And we had a lot of issues, now, I think 80% of marriages that end up divorce could work. 20%, I believe, need to end. I don't know. I think we could have made things work. I think we probably still could if there was a true like change of heart, right? The heart has to change. But unfortunately, God allows divorce because sometimes somebody's heart hardens. And if somebody's heart hardens, there's no coming back. And I think, I'm saying that, I'm not talking about her. I'm just saying that like for men to understand that like if your wife's heart hardens, like when she goes ice cold, like it's done. Like it's too late. There is like, you hear about people reconnecting down the road in the future and all that. So I'm not like closed off to those ideas, but like your actions have consequences. And I don't think men appreciate that your wife does have hopes and dreams as well. And she might not know what they are now because she's freaking raising a baby. She's got kids. Like that's how a mother is wired, to take care of the kids. And she'll get there at some point down the road, but being in tune with like what she's experiencing, like apparently I thought I was kind of tuned in, but according to her, I had no clue what she was feeling and going through. And she gave me warning signs and I was just too busy. We had to have the next launch, had the next event, have to have the next milestone, had to get, everything just was about like growth. And And when you're hanging out with guys, like you're trying to keep up. That's your identity. It all came back to not like really establishing like my identity is not in who I am. Sorry. My identity is not in let me say that again. Yeah. My identity is not in what I do. It's who I am. And I had it mixed up. I think most men were like, when we get together, what do we talk about? We don't, hey, Gavin, are you happy with who you are? We say, hey, Gavin, how's business? How's your podcast going? Yeah. How's it done? Who got coming on your show? It's all about like what you're doing, not about who you're becoming. And us guys, that's kind of where we live. So, I mean, if you can start to find a band of brothers who are like willing to start talking about that stuff, as I was hanging out with some guys down here and we were talking about this stuff. I actually was telling a few of the guys, you guys are going to end up like me if you don't like self-correct, and giving them hope, like letting like this stuff is all fixable, but you have to have an intention and know like at the end of the day, like make all this money, you climb this ladder, you're the top by yourself. Like what did you accumulate? What did you actually accumulate? And
not what you lose along the way.
And it's like, a lot of these guys, like they get bored easily, right? And you're in a relationship, and like we talk about all the real stuff too. Like obviously, men always have temptations of all shape and forms. But like we talk about like, hey, breaking up the family is not worth it. Like you have way too much to lose. Like for any extra amount of money or any extra amount of like, hey, giving into some form of temptation that you could get away with, like it is not worth it. There's nothing worth breaking up the family unit. There's just too much at stake. So like men have to protect the family and have a vision for, what the family is and what they stand for and where they're going. And that's the man's responsibility. It's a weight to carry, but like somebody's got to carry it. So you got to get around guys that like have like the family is like in fact first, and it's not like getting to the next level of impact and growth and potential, being the best version of you. The best version of you probably nobody's going to know. The best version of you, your kids should know and your wife's going to know. But we want the best version of us to be the version that everyone sees on social media, which is like what people see, but like the highest version of you like is going to be probably a version where there's no cameras and where you're actually present and there's no phones and nobody's recording and it's just you and the people that matter most. That's going to be the best version of you. And because we're so insecure and we need validation because we don't deal with this stuff because it's too hard to look ourselves in the mirror and realize I'm building an identity around possessions and power and pleasure and all this other stuff, we end up like fractured. And it can really just suck the life out of you slowly. And then to be honest, like I actually looked in the mirror, and when I started to do the work, I remember Flavia saying to me, I hope you're not doing this for me. And it kind of annoyed me because I kind of like, well, obviously I want to do the work so we can make this work. But I genuinely knew what she meant. I'm like, no, I don't like, there's a lot of parts about me that I love, but there are a couple pieces about me that I don't love. And there's some stuff that I actually need to change. I don't like that I get bored when I'm around my kids. I don't like that I can't focus and find a conversation fulfilling. I didn't like that about me. I'm like, why do I not see any value in this conversation? And I realized that's not something I want to be proud of. I would say, well, because they're not on my level, or we don't have anything in common. Well, why don't I take an interest in who they are and what they do? Like that really bothered me that I had all these retarded excuses for not being able to connect to people because I thought I was like ahead of them or something. And there was no value that they could bring to me. I had a great conversation with the taxi driver here. Like, educated me on the whole freaking taxi revolution. I was like fascinated. I'm like, getting to know the guy. I was like, I would have never done that before. I've been on my phone sitting in the back seat. I got in the front seat and I just talked to the guy. I'm like, now I feel, I feel connection. That's the money word. I think every dude I know deep down actually values connection. They want connection, but just don't know how to get it.
They're finding the wrong places. They're finding it in success.
Every man wants connection. This past couple of days, I was hanging out with these guys and we had some of the best conversations ever. And it's because we felt connected, because we were sharing like fears and vulnerabilities. And, one of the guys opened up about like, he's just doesn't have a great relationship with one of his children. And he felt ashamed because they didn't know what to do. And he was asking us like, I don't know what to do. I'm like, this is real talk. I was so impressed that he opened up. And, other guys are just kind of sharing stuff for like real temptations men have.
Especially when you're in a position of success and you have a lot of eyes on you, and
you've been in a relationship,
a lot of money,
even maybe,
as well.
Yeah, and maybe you've been in the relationship with the same woman for a long time, and all of a sudden, like, you're kind of at a stagnation. This happens, and like, the sex life is boring, and guys open up about this. You have to talk about this stuff, and like, hey, dude, this is actually normal, but like, let's talk about, here's you could go this way or you could go this way, and like, we just started to deconstruct, like, how can you start to improve this area of your life that he didn't have anybody else to talk to about this. And it's a very important area to talk about. It wasn't something you could sweep under the rug. So having these relationships where you can talk about some of these stuff, and the other guys start to open up and like, oh yeah, we went through this phase too, and here's what we're doing. And next thing you know, there's way more trust in the group now because guys are sharing. And some guys that came in, we call each other out too. Like, that's not cool. Like, dude, you got to kick in over here, man. Like, so I was the one doing more of that.
Yeah. Here I come with a big bag of lessons.
And they know, I can say that. They know I'm not like judging them, like, because I'm so vulnerable myself. Like, they know it's coming from a place of love.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not here to make a dude feel more shame or guilt, right? Mm-hmm. But what I do want to let them know is that there are consequences to your choices if you don't wake up. So,
yeah, I identified that you were making a lot of changes to your life and what seemed to be a lot of changes to your identity over the last year. Now, I didn't know that you were going through a breakup with your wife, but I was very curious in terms of, okay, where has this Vince come out of, who has removed caffeine from his life, who no longer takes TRT after being on it for 12 years, who's opening up and being more vulnerable. And this was all the consequence of your breakdown?
Yeah. So through my therapy, I worked with somebody who specializes in rebuilding the brain through these supplements, Biome Tech, and I'm not associated with them in any shape or form, but things that rebuild the gut, basically cell regeneration, and essentially they light your brain on fire. That's the best way I can describe it. And actually, the formulas that they had inspired the movie with what's his name, Bradley Cooper.
Limitless.
Yeah. So their stuff inspired that movie. So just imagine, like, and when I went on this stuff, I had more energy than I can describe. And I was like, my brain was like always lit up. It felt like it wasn't an espresso feeling, but probably the easiest way to kind of explain it to somebody. It felt like I was on a drug, but this is just like bacteria that rebuilt the gut. And
immediate impact?
Yeah, you take them, not the sprays. They have sprays, crystals, spoons. And I would go down and I would meet her, and we do these couple spoons of bacteria was on. I can't explain it all properly, but it was a cultured fermented food that you'd put it in, there was almost an immediate effect. And so when I say I came off this stuff, I also had some stuff that also was like supporting me. It wasn't just like I cut it completely and I was like
a zombie for.
Well, the caffeine, I did feel like a zombie. The caffeine knocked me out for a month. It's been actually almost 1 year to this month. I've been maybe a little longer. Yeah, I've been off of caffeine for over a year this month. That was the worst month of my life. No caffeine, because I used to drink 300-400 milligrams of caffeine a day, if not more. Remember, I created a world's strongest pre-workout.
Yeah.
Preload.
That's right.
Right. Most expensive bottle of pre-workout. And I created that. I love caffeine. Like, I'm Italian. I love like the espresso. Like, I have all my buddies like 7-8 espressos a day. These guys would go over, having espressos at like 9 o'clock at night. I'm like, espresso was our blood type. It was, so I looked at everything that contributed to this disconnection from self. And the way I describe it is like I was asleep, and anything that prevented me from being awake. So I didn't like to be in touch with like feelings. I just like to be in my place of comfort, which was driving, which was building, which is creating, like producing. That's where I felt like
Alive.
Yeah, yeah. So testosterone obviously helps you be more decisive. When I'm on TRT, I can make decisions way faster. I was also I felt like more muscular. It was easier to stay leaner. I had more energy. You just feel more confident. But I felt like it was artificial. And I didn't abuse it. I was right in the doctor levels, but I didn't feel authentic. And I also wasn't really talking about it. So again, I looked at the areas in my life where I wasn't connected to who I am, and I wanted to start to eliminate those things. I also didn't like the practicalities of having to stick a needle in my ass for the rest of my life. And if I use a nasal spray and stuff, there's other things I use, but I just didn't like the idea of having to be on something. And I also realized that a lot of the guys who are on this probably needed to be told a similar message to me, because this lady told me, like, you got to get off this stuff. Like, you don't know the long-term effects of it. She kind of scared the crap out of me. And like, even though it's culturally acceptable to be on TRT,
it's almost normalized now.
It's very normalized. And it's like every dude's on it. And, and I just was like, I didn't feel authentic. And I'm not here to tell a guy you should come on or come off, but I didn't feel authentic. And I feel like that was a big part of the reason I wasn't connected to myself. So that had to go. Caffeine. I love caffeine, but and there's tons of science to support like benefits of caffeine. You could find all the science in the world to support it. But again, it's a drug. At the end of the day, it creates artificial energy. And the way I understood it is that it doesn't give you energy, but it delays fatigue. So there's always a debt to pay.
Mm-hmm.
And that debt to pay for me was lying on the couch at the end of the day. When my family needed me, when my kids wanted to go jump on the trampoline, I would go lie on the couch. I had too much caffeine. So I almost like used the caffeine on me. It's not like at the end of the day, I'm like, okay, just give me a second, guys. Let me go get some more caffeine so I can go play with you guys. I took the caffeine to serve me and to build the business. So I like robbed my family of the time. I should have been taking I should have been taking caffeine at 4:00 in the afternoon, not in the morning, so I could go play with the kids and so I could be present in the evening time. Instead, I come home and I just go lie on the couch for an hour and a half at night. And then I'm like, Vince, when are you making dinner? Vince, when are you making dinner? So like, I just started to look at it from a lens that this was all for myself. And then the alcohol, the alcohol was, I think, just a tool to enhance just the lack of love in myself. I just felt like in parties and social environments, I didn't like who I was. I felt like I was boring, or I felt like I didn't bring this version of me that was like a lot more fun.
The persona.
Yeah. My brother jokes around. Yeah, he said you have to rely on your personality. And I was, as a kid, it's not a big deal. It amplifies the occasion. Of course it does. But then I thought to myself, is there a way to get to a place where I don't need it? Alcohol, I haven't cut out completely, but I went for almost over half a year with no alcohol. When leading up to that, I think we had like a bottle of wine a night for like years and years, like a lot. And it was like, at the end of the day, me and her were just like, it was our numbing pain or something.
Mm-hmm. And a distraction from
it was a distraction
problems
from
in the relationship.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We could go lie on the couch and we both, numb ourselves, and we didn't deal with anything. So that had to go. But alcohol destroys brains, right? Destroys your truth receptors, right? Destroys dendrites, and you don't have the ability to recall what you said, or you don't have the ability to recall what others said. So like there's nothing positive about alcohol. So
yet you still drink
a little bit. Yeah. I was with the guys, there's so much wine, I want to be able to, I don't think I'll ever cut alcohol out like forever. I also want to be, authentic with myself. I really enjoy like some red wine.
The socializing aspect, it's, if you cut everything out, does life get a little bit boring?
Yeah, I think I'm not in a place right now where like alcohol, I haven't figured out how that's going to play. Like you see a lot of these big guys, like everyone's sober now. And I think that's great. I think being sober is a way better way to live. But at the same time, I don't want to demonize, having, wanting to experience some scotch or some whiskey with some guys. I think, some people say, moderation kills. Some people say everything in moderation. Alcohol is a poison. I want to openly say that it is a poison. So, I just have a little bit of poison. So I do recognize that it's a poison. But at the same time, I want to be in a place where I also don't feel so inauthentic where I'm not drinking because I want to look at me, I don't drink. I want it just to be a genuine thing. So I haven't figured that alcohol. I can see myself enjoying, some wine and some whiskey and some scotch, having a cigar, in certain occasions to enhance the experience intentionally. But definitely not keeping my liquor cabinet stocked and my wine cabinet stocked like I used to. I'd have boxes of wine come in every couple of days. It was people come over, hey, I'd have the wine out. It was a part of my life.
Your identity again.
Yeah, that has gone. I got this beautiful bar at the Tennessee house, and it's hardly stocked. I'm like, what a shame. I guess, do I stock it or do I not stock it? Do I stock it for decoration or? But
balls of water.
Yeah.
And then, yeah. So it's intention is important. So intention around alcohol. This week you were up with Phil Graham and a few men up in Belfast, and there was an intention there to go and enjoy and have some incredible connection with some incredible men. But then when intention is not there, you can sort of lose your way. It just becomes, again, an escapism or an avoidance. They
all came to see me back in December, and that's actually when I was I didn't drink the whole time they came to my house. It was crazy. I didn't have a sip. This trip is just in a different place, and I just felt, one, he's got incredible wine. Two, we're eating incredible food, and I just didn't feel like I wanted to miss out, if you will, and I wanted to have that experience with them, and I enjoyed it. I think the big thing is when you're like, oh my God, I just said I wasn't going to, and I did. I knew I was going to, so I think it's having, like you said, intentionality around you do what you say you do. If you're going to say I'm going to have 2 drinks, have 2 drinks. All right. If you say I'm not drinking, then don't drink. If it's okay, I'm going to enjoy the Friday night, but I'm not going to be drinking with them the other nights. Just stick to what your standards are. I think that's the key to being authentic. It's sticking to what you say you're going to do. I think where guys start to lose their self-confidence and feel like an imposter is when they say I'm not drinking and then they get bombed 4 nights in a row. That's going to mess you up.
Yeah. You don't trust yourself then.
Yeah, exactly. So I think it's I'm going to try some of that stuff, but I think you just have to have some limits and just, hold to your limits. And I think to me, that is a more aspirational way of living. Right.
And how have your intentions changed in other areas of your life, having gone through this process?
Well, since we're talking about all the hot subjects, I eliminated pornography. Never would say I had an issue, a problem with it, but right after I got separated, I got Covenant Eyes, the app, $19.99 and a month, and I put it on the kids' devices. I put it on my phone and my computer, so I've had zero even access. So I haven't viewed any pornography for almost 16 months, and I felt like that was a very, very good decision. I'm actually going to make a YouTube video on that, and I just wanted to eliminate things that just created any more guilt or shame. I just wanted to start to reconnect with God. And I know when there's blatant sin in your life like that, it's hard to hear God's voice.
It's also difficult that it's also a period of your life where intimacy is completely gone.
Yeah.
And
I knew I was vulnerable. And I knew I didn't want to be vulnerable, where the problem was so severe. I was so awake. I wanted to fix it. I didn't want anything to interfere. So if I'm going to start to pour, because there was so much at stake, and I wanted to, 1, work on myself, I was hoping that she'd see a change. And I was like, it wasn't worth it. It was like there's too much at stake to risk that interfering with a recovery process. So I took that very extreme stance of like, that's got to go. And I knew the only way I could get that eliminated was just to put like, you can try and type Pornhub on your phone here, but nothing will come up. So I have access to zero pornography, and it's been like, don't even miss it. It's been great. Now, unfortunately, your freaking Instagram app can turn into porn if you look at too many of the wrong photos.
Yeah.
And
you go to your Discovery and it's a porn site. Yeah.
Yeah. And then it just feeds you more and more. So,
so how do you manage then whenever the craving comes up? When the
the temptation. Well, first of all,
comes up,
temptation isn't wrong. Giving in to the flesh stuff. I mean, the flesh is very, very strong. The flesh is one to recognize, like, these are not desires that you need to be ashamed of. And I think a lot of people are raised in, religious upbringings where you almost feel guilty if you see a beautiful woman. Like when I pulled up, a beautiful woman walked in front of the taxi cab. Like I noticed her. I think where you get yourself into trouble, like the first look is innocent. It's the second look and the third look that's a sin, where you're kind of starting to undress her with your eyes. But if you're downtown Nashville and there's thousands of beautiful women there, like I used to feel guilty there. I'm like, you can't control a beautiful woman walking in front of you, but you can also control what environments you put yourself in. So I think you got it. There's like two parts of it. There's one to, if you're struggling with something, don't, play with fire. But then at the same time, you do need to understand that these urges will come and go. It's kind of like food temptation, right? Like if you go to a party, it's like acknowledge like you're craving something right now, and just like doesn't mean you need to act on it, right? In the Bible, it talks about I gave you a spirit of power, love, and self-control. Like self-control is one of the fruit of the spirit. Like self-control, like we have the ability to choose, right? God is a sovereign God, but he has also given us the role of responsibility. So understanding that I have responsibility to break that word up, ability to respond. So when I feel something, I have a choice. And I find that like sexual, like temptation, like that, cravings, like that's just like food. If you just kind of wait, it goes away. So you just have to realize it's like I'm at a party. I'm like, oh my God, they got chips. Holy geez, they got donuts. They got all the stuff, all the carbs. I'm not supposed to be eating these this week, whatever. If you wait 30 minutes, all of a sudden you gain a sense of confidence. Okay, I got this. I'm good. And then you start to realize like it's just, you have to wait through that 30-minute like temptation window, and it kind of goes away.
There's also the environmental factor, because when you go to a party and you're surrounded by indulgent foods, it's a lot more difficult to resist that temptation. And the same with women, perhaps. If you were going to bars and nightclubs every single night, your resilience to resist temptation may begin to dissolve.
Yeah.
So those environmental factors are also extremely important.
Yeah.
So, but then part of environment is our phone now as well.
Yeah.
So it's about moderating that.
Moderating the phone too. That's huge. Yeah. I mean, there's that new book on the anxious generation with like how phones are just destroying kids. And they're now showing like kids shouldn't have phones until like high school, and any devices, like it's creating so much anxiety. I went to Canada's Wonderland recently, and every freaking kid is on their phone. And like the next generation of kids, like they are very disturbed and very like not normal. I've
disconnected again.
Disconnected. I don't even know. It's very, very concerning. But yeah, that phone, like the amount of access, the amount of stimulation, dopamine, adult material you can get, like nobody was designed to handle that much stuff in their back pocket. So you have to have like a vision for your life. I think you've got to have like a high purpose. And I know when I'm like in purpose, when I'm like focused on building something, I don't have time for that. I don't have time to scroll because like I got like my day is busy, right? They say the devil loves white space on your calendar, right? So like have no white space on your calendar. Be intentional. And some of your intention might be like a 2-hour no phone zone, right? No phone, 2 hours a day. If you can't do that, you have a problem. Well, Vince, I run a big business. Okay, well then you can't run a big business off your phone 2 hours a day. So you set your standards for yourself. But that one, you got to be really disciplined. I actually have my kids help me. We do a daily 2-hour no phone zone. And my son, Gianluca, loves it. He's like, Daddy, what time is it? It's like 10:50. He's like, okay, so 2 hours, 11, 12. So you have to be off your phone. You can come on. You can turn it back on at 12:51. Yeah. And they love it. Daddy, have you done your no phone zone yet today? And you might say it's embarrassing to need your kids to stay off your phone as motivation, but I mean, you got to do what you got to do.
Well, your kids want you to be present with them.
Yeah, and like, what are you telling them when you're on the freaking phone in front of them? Like they're like basically saying
your phone's more important than they.
Yeah.
There.
Yeah, and they don't know how to say that, but they will get annoyed as the kids get a little older. Like my little girl, Amelia, she'll like, Daddy, you never listen to me. And she gets so frustrated and you like see the disappointment and you're like, oh crap. Like then you realize you have a problem. You never listen to me. I'm like, well, that's not true. Like you didn't even hear what I said. What did I say? And then they start to push back. You're like, oh my crap. You were talking about, see, you don't even remember. You don't even see, you don't listen. And your little girl saying that to you. Then you realize, okay, there are like consequences. You can't get away with like not being undisciplined. You can't get away with not having self-control. Like it will catch up to you in every area of your life. So, I mean, that's kind of.
Have you been able to forgive yourself for what's happened?
I don't know if I'm not sure. I think I have and I haven't. Like I put a lot, I really feel like I fell on the sword with this. A lot of my family, I just kind of be kind of careful what I say, but like, obviously it takes two to play, right? It takes two people to start a marriage. It takes two people to put a marriage back together. So, and she would openly admit like she had her contribution, but I think I owned a lot more of it.
As in you wanted to make it work more so than she did?
More so, I took more ownership of how it got to where it got. A lot of people have said, and at the end of the day, it is what it is. But I think it's been a lot harder for me to forgive myself because I feel like this should never have happened to me. I grew up in a Christian home. My dad was a pastor for 19 years. My parents have a great marriage. Like they actually modeled. Like it wasn't like I wasn't given any tools. It wasn't like I didn't have a good model. I can't make those excuses. It wasn't like I wasn't given the warning signs. Hey, Vince, things need to change. Like I was not intentionally, but consciously or maybe
subconsciously,
neglectful. I have to own that I took her goodness and her support for granted. And that's been really hard to know, like I played a role in breaking up the family unit.
But all this was happening whilst you're unaware of it. I mean, this is, if you didn't know then what you know now.
I didn't think it was that bad. It was like we were building a house in another country while everything was falling apart. We had a great life. There was a lot of great experiences. The kids are in private Christian school. She's got a chef. She's got a personal trainer. She's got everything. We go down to Florida.
Didn't have the connected husband.
What she said, she wanted a relationship, but at the same time, I'm looking at all the things that we're doing, and I think we both had intentions to get down to Tennessee and make things work down there. And I think building the house for her was a distraction. And, I'm like, we're building a dream house in another country. I'm getting a visa for crying out loud. We're doing all the stuff we have to do to cross the border. And I'm thinking to myself, couldn't have been that bad. I mean, you look at the photos, there's a lot of smiles. We definitely had fights and stuff, but the relationship wasn't the priority. And I think that's where I have a hard time forgiving myself because I was given all these warning signs and I'm like, I feel like I need to suffer now. I feel like I need to, and I know there's a degree of truth to that and not, but I feel like I need to almost be punished. Like I deserve this. And there's almost you need to pay, like you need to do penance for a long, long time. And I don't think that's biblical. Maybe somebody can chime in who's listening, but that's kind of like where I went. Like whatever negative things come my way, I deserve this. And I maybe a bit of truth in terms of like consequences, but that the forgiveness piece has not come easily or quickly.
Not there yet. You need to pay your penance first. It's almost as if you have to go through the suffering in order to find acceptance and forgiveness. Is that the way? When you've paid the price?
I know God's forgiven me. Yeah, I think it's something I need to do. I don't know if I've fully forgiven myself. I don't even know what that like kind of feels like. I feel like it's still so fresh that maybe I have forgiven myself, but I'm still feeling I'm still in a lot of pain. It's not like this hasn't been like, okay, that was a chapter, that's over. And I can't wait I'm excited for the future now. I haven't got to like this stage in transition where I'm dreaming again.
You're still in the past.
Yeah, I'm still in like the disorientation phase. Yeah, I'm not in the, okay, I've fully accepted. I'm not in the like looking forward to the future phase yet.
How do you manage this pain and suffering that you're in with your children?
A lot of acting. There's a lot of,
have they been able to identify the cracks and the pain that you're dealing with?
I cry with them a lot. It's so like, I used to never cry ever. For like 43 years, I cried at two family members' funerals.
Which is a tragedy in itself that you haven't cried. And I mean, that's something that a lot of men struggle with. Yeah.
Yeah. And one of the first things my therapist taught me was crying is ice melting. And it was crazy because when I did one of the first sessions with her, come back to the kids in a moment, we wanted to figure out when was the first time in my life that I had experienced rejection and loss and disappointment. And because that was the trigger, like it was that late December night when I came back after a few weeks away and I thought everything was going to be fine. She's like, I'm gone. I'm done. Like, it's too late. And that's when I lost it. I destroyed a lot of things in my home. I didn't touch her, but I completely lost control. And that's when she's like, you can't handle rejection. And I never even really processed that word rejection. And that's where I wanted to start the therapy. So the lady, she took me back in time and we were trying to figure out like when was the first time I experienced severe rejection, loss, disappointment, because those are the feelings that were coming up. And we brought it back to my grade 10 officer cross country meet at the end of the race when our team was expected to do really well and I was expected to perform. And at the end of the race, 5K race in Castor, Ontario, there's 400 meters left. It was pouring rain, super muddy. I experimented with eating too many bananas the night before. It was a dumb idea. And I collapsed like with 400 meters left in the race. And I had to practically crawl in on the mud, like with the last 400 meters. And I went from like being in the top 20 to like in the 80s. And our team, we all shit the bed. And I was so disappointed with myself. When I was in the car, I smashed my parents' window. And I don't know even where that came from. Like I didn't grow up like around violence or fighting or punching stuff. So I didn't even know how I did that. But I did that. And the therapist wanted me to go back to that day when I was 15 years old. And she wanted me to, she said, have you ever talked to your 15-year-old self? And as soon as she said that, I got this wave of emotion and I started to cry. And I didn't know what was happening. And she said, what would you tell him? And I started to like cry more. And then I completely lost it. And I started like crying uncontrollably And I've never had this happen to me before. I could not stop crying. And I started to talk to him. And I realized that that little boy, that 15-year-old boy, had never, ever had anybody like coach him through that loss and disappointment and rejection, and to say that it's okay. It's just a race. You know, we'll get him next time. I'm here for you. You did your best. You ran your heart out. And I'm not exaggerating, Gavin. For about 40 minutes, I was crying uncontrollably. And I was like trying to she was on Zoom, and I'm like, what's happening? What's happening? I don't know what's happening. She says, you're grieving. I'm like, what's that mean? She's like, you're grieving for the first time in your life, unprocessed emotions that you've never grieved. I'm like, why can't this won't stop? So I was trying to convince her, like, I'm not faking this. I'm not faking this. She's like, that's okay. And I just talked to him, and I bawled my eyes out for like 40 minutes with her on Zoom. And that was the day that like I would say my heart reopened. My heart like cracked open. And then she said, we're going to go on a journey together. It's going to be the longest journey you ever take. I'm like, what journey is that? We're going to connect your head and your heart. The longest 18 inches a man will ever travel is from his head to his heart. And we're going to start that journey, because I've always lived in my head, which is where most men live. And she said, we're going to start living from your heart. And that's kind of where my therapy started. And I realized I was never connected to myself, which is why I couldn't connect to people in general. My team, my clients, my family. I was there, but I wasn't there. And now you ask me about my kids. I came down for my birthday, and they all had presents. And as soon as I saw them like jump out and surprise, happy birthday, I just burst out crying. Like I can cry like on the spot. Like I'm just so much more connected to my heart that my little girl, Brianna, she's like, when sometimes I'm not crying when we're watching a movie and it's a little sad, she'll look up to me. She goes, Daddy, are you crying? She's always checking on me, because she's like, she looks at me like, Daddy cries a lot. I don't know if that's good or bad, but
shouldn't be a bad thing.
Yeah, no.
Yeah. I mean,
but
isn't it normal to laugh when you're joyful and happy? It's normal to cry if you're sad. And
yeah, exactly. And I think I'm the best thing that has happened from this entire process is like, I feel like I've melted a lot of ice, and I really like who I am. I really like that I can connect and that I feel alive for the first time in my life. Nice. And unfortunately, it took that sledgehammer to crack my heart open. But I mean, if that's what was necessary to now have like a great relationship with my kids, I guess I'm going to focus on that positive.
Amazing, man. And Vince, thank you so much. This has been a brilliant conversation, a very important conversation. And I think a lot of men listening to this will relate deeply to it, me included. So thanks for being so open and honest and vulnerable and sharing this with us. And for anyone who's listening to the podcast, where can they find you? I know you're across all platforms.
They can find me on Vince Del Monte on Instagram, Vince Del Monte Podcast Show, Vince Del Monte YouTube, Vince Del Monte on Facebook.
Brilliant. Thank you, Vince. And until next time, I'll shoot to the States and do the next podcast.
Amazing.
Brilliant. Thank you, my man.
Amazing.